quality education and financial assistance. But this dream and his reality were miles apart.
Na me o ma me ho e wo yekrom. Na me ko school ma me nchen. Ana dakrubi ma mbe ba me ma me ho say ne bra bi o baby pa kola di na ko school. Nti ade akola no ba ya bo an se akola ne fi school ba obepam do no di abo ano. Ana ma me se o se papa no ne bra no o de mi be ko school nko ade a ende obejai na mako ana ma me se o me ko school nti me nko hwe o edope na me pam ana ma me jai mu na me ko e nti me ko du ho no ana papa ne kacha me se ha ma ba nye school na mba be ko nti mba be enso ese juma oka sa sem ne chere no na
For 5 years, he worked from the crack of dawn to midnight, diving through the dark, perilous waters of the Volta Lake day and night, sometimes on an empty stomach and little sleep.
And then I didn't pa if you say me call lake no so no say o ahokra no ejuma mo ye ho no na enye me size ejuma na ye mpanyimfo ejuma nkasa nti na lake no na eyeden brobu mu yeden ho pa me no me tai davi konsuo na ase ekoyi edoba metumi twi kro esisa nsuo wo kronim some mremi eya ekoefuo mu nso
He was exposed to various degrees of danger without education, proper feeding, and a curtailing of his rights to health, leisure, liberty, among others. Within those 5 years, this was his most traumatic experience.
Adia esi wonsio no sama me apa ne se dakubina na ye wonsio no so ntino na win mframa body dindin ntino na me de metina boat no metina na me kire me direct boat na me kire kwan no nti me hu na mframa kesi bi be boat no na me to nsuo nim nti me dwin se me master ba no obebre boat na ase ama ma boat no one bre boat na sa fe na o twin speed ana me num nsuo ana ya me konsio na se mframa na bonti no me konsio na ese mewu na me konsio na se na me call me team nti ha na me so me wie ba beni nti me so me bewu ani se ya na me de besi ni na me te se madam fo no boat ni mu ana bo me din hope obetumi aye chi boat no e ho na me nya akokudro bi ana me chi boat no na me rem
his dreams and aspirations all taken from him until one day real help finally came.
That could be ana me fin so buy nti na me onsuo na no na ye siesie do na koto nti e ho na me hu se boat nkese bi omo ne ba nti na me hu se master ne ba ne boy bi o mo agreement ho ana boy ne kache master ban se police for na ba no master ban so se enye police for bi anti enkrofo bi na omo so beba ne papa ha be meeting nti ho na police for no buy ho na mbo meeting 5 times ansa na meje so one na omo kache mi se ende de me peo omo de meko nti minti na ha bio tamam buy no na eya me yem hyehyɛ me pa me ni ma de kom de me kwakwe na yo ho no tama me ho no ya muta ka kire nse nkrofo bechi nipa no mo de omakoye sakawa na omakoton mo ni ade nti om ba na me yem hyehyɛ me pa nti omo be che me kwansa na be hu se o sa na omo bo ame.
The International Justice Mission and other partner organizations have for years committed their resources to the eradication of child trafficking in Ghana. So far, they have rescued some 164 children from the Volta Lake. Emmanuel Kanga is a social worker with the aftercare department of the mission, and he tells us what happens after rescue.
We provide services to children who are rescued from trafficking. Our service to the children begins at the point of rescue. So immediately they are rescued, we provide what we call crisis care. The crisis care is meant to make the children feel calm, to give them the reassurance that they have been moved from a place of abuse to a place of safety, to remind them that we are there for their good and to help them get back to their families. That's what the crisis care involves. After that, we interview them in a trauma-informed way to collect information about their families, to be able to trace back their homes, assess the homes, and then reintegrate them. This basic information helps to also know what kind of services each child would require to be able to recover from the traumatic experience on the lake.
Rescued victims often have to go through years of trauma-focused cognitive behavioral therapy to help them manage the effects of this trauma.
We have a therapy called the Trauma-Focused Cognitive Behavioral Therapy, TFCBT. That's a therapy that we take survivors through. There is an assessment, a trauma assessment at the time of rescue during the needs assessment. Now, depending on the score of the client, he or she is taken through the TFCBT. Hope was also taken through that TFCBT, and at the end of it, there is a graduation for them to know that they have completed the therapy. Now, this therapy helps them to understand the trauma that they experienced, for them to come to terms with it, and also for them to find ways of managing the effects of the traumatic experience. You know, trauma is such that if you do not get the right support for it, its effect stays with you for a lifetime.
As a social worker, Emmanuel tells me how traumatizing it is for him to learn the level of appreciation among some communities, even among families whose kids have been trafficked.
One of my personal biggest challenges is when at the point of home tracing and assessment, after many interactions with a child, you come to the point where you appreciate that the child was abused, he has gone through a lot of trauma. But then you meet with the child's family in your assessment, they seem adamant about his experience. It hurts, and it's, even for me as a social worker, sometimes it gets traumatizing.
Adib Sani is a security analyst, and he believes the issue of trafficking is imbibed in some cultural practices which must be checked to avert any existential security threats to the country.
Unfortunately, we've been very much fixated on today's trends. What are the immediate causes of insecurity? But this certainly would pose a bit of an existential security threat to the country in the near future, and that, I must say, is quite worrying. A lot of it is also imbibed in our cultural practices. You know, I remember some time ago we had to speak over and over again about female genital cutting and all that because it was a cultural issue, but now the old village folk have come to the realization that no, this is certainly not a humane thing to do to a fellow human. I think with education we should be able to get a lot more people in these rural areas to understand the repercussions of them giving their wars to these people to go engage in fishing activities, because it's become a cultural norm.
The traditional idea of trafficking involves recruitment, transportation, trading, which heavily relies on physical interactions. But a Child Online Africa believes trafficking transcends the physical And the advent of social media has made children even more susceptible to the menace. Awo Aidam Amenya is the director of the network.
Yes, when we talk about trafficking, we're talking about a situation where an offender or a trafficker makes contact with a person, be it a young person or an adult, and all of that, and then advance. So they build relationship and trust, and then the next moment they coerce them, and then the next moment it's more like you have a virtual chain or secret chain, because you have opened up, given all your information to the person, and the person is using that against you. If you don't do ABC, I am going to do this, that kind of thing. So when that begins, clearly, it transcends just the physical. And in what we do, we look at the threat landscape for trafficking to be one, grooming. Sometimes adults are groomed without even knowing. Someone is connecting with you online, winning your trust. Over time, the person is telling you how to even lead your life without you knowing. That is grooming. And that is done to young girls a lot. And sometimes it's through self-generated videos. So there are young people, junior high school leavers, who are making all videos for social media likes. Exactly. So from there, a predator sees you and takes advantage of you in one way or the other.
Human trafficking is an offense punishable by the laws of Ghana. However, some perpetrators get off easily.
Often perpetrators, after committing a crime, will run to their opinion leaders, church leaders, traditional leaders, and even sometimes political leaders, so that they will come and plead on their behalf. And when it persists for a long time, I think justice cannot be served for the victim who has been abused, whether defilement, whether rape, whether trafficking incidents. Often we really face that challenge. And so we want to tell our church leaders, our opinion leaders, traditional leaders, that we should be able to stand up to these perpetrators and tell them to face the consequences of their actions.
Adib Sani believes anyone who pleads on behalf of a trafficker should be seen as a criminal.
So as crazy as it might sound, let's criminalize anyone making an intervention on behalf of, I think, I mean, we have a lot of laws, but situations change by the day. It's just like security. Yesterday's insecurity is not as today. And many also have found different ways of engaging succinctly in this, activity, especially with domestic help.
How can Ghana best deal with this existential threat against children?
One of the most effective, progressive ways to deal with this scourge is to build institutional capacity. Without strong institutions to counter that threat, that scourge, would have a lot more of child trafficking happening.
If there is more public education on this and people come to terms with it, it would help reduce it. Others would use poverty as a reason for giving their children out. I don't think it's quite an excuse to actually give your child out to be trafficked.
One key measure experts have suggested would help in the eradication of the menace is education. But who should be educated?
When they go and pick up the children, they act like the parents, okay? And they move with them to, another part of town. Unfortunately, a lot of our police officers don't really know how to read body language. They are not very trained to figure out whether indeed these children's parents are those in the front seat.
The role of the police in the fight against human trafficking in Ghana cannot be underestimated. But do they have the requisite training to detect and deal with trafficking cases? ASP William Ayarika spoke at a stakeholder conference organized by the International Justice Mission on the eradication of human trafficking in Ghana.
Human trafficking, as I said, is a specialized area. And we need to train our police officers to have that technical eye. Because of that, in fact, the Ghana Police Service has introduced human trafficking as a subject at all the training centers across the country so that we can train our police officers to be on top of the job. Recently, during our promotional examination, which we conduct yearly, we have introduced human trafficking as a part of the course before you are promoted to the next round. So at the end of the day, you'll be equipped with at least some professionalism when it comes to human trafficking.
Getting justice for victims is identified as one of the most effective measures in deterring potential traffickers. But do all survivors want justice? He, however, has this message to all parents who are tempted to give their children out to helpers, even relatives.
And I will phobia almost tinka, but some catch on say. Now, I almost family members and I'm blood clot more obianjai neighbor and family say Uncle Shen swear wa hamano. Uncle for a bimu yeo, but a bimu de omonye. It's more de bedu, but no honey cry, bium.
In your little step for justice, what can you do in your vicinity to help curb child trafficking in Ghana? For MX24 News, my name is Ajuatin Krama.